Yo, what is up, Patreon, and welcome to another video. Today, we're gonna get into a juicy topic, quite juicy actually, and we're gonna talk all about sex, how to be good at it, how to, in a sense, master it, and all my best tips through research and experience that I can give you guys on the subject. Because let's be real, out of all the things that are important when it comes to retaining a woman in your life, sex is a big part of that. And one thing I've learned through women is that a lot of guys suck at it. So hopefully, if you're more on the inexperienced side, which I am not, you will learn from this video. So for us guys, sex is usually different, right? It's just a physical activity. We don't necessarily have to be emotionally connected to somebody. We see a nice body, a nice ass, a nice pair of boobs, and we're like, yo, I'm ready to go in there. Let's get it, right? It's one of our biggest biological urges that we have, and that is to have sex with multiple beautiful women. But from a chick, that is a different perspective, and usually, unless they're a slut, usually they have to have some sort of emotional connection to you, and they have to see you as, in a sense, qualified in order to get that from them. That is why we talk about self-improvement so much, is because guys value sex, and in order to get it, you have to be a man of value in some regard, at least if you want to sleep with the highest tier of women. But we're not going to talk too much about how or why sex happens. Let's talk about once you actually get to that step where you're physically escalating, you're getting it, how do you just be the best at it and just rock her world? So let's divide it into two parts. The first one is foreplay. Foreplay, simply put, is anything you do before the dick enters the vagina, right? The leading up to that, turning her on. Now, foreplay could be as simple as kissing, petting, making out, kissing their neck, rubbing, touching, and that's pretty much all you have to do. Figure out a point to where she is turned on. You can do this by kind of rubbing her vagina area, seeing if she's wet or not. And if she is wet, then pretty much she is ready to go. Also, another part of foreplay is fellatio or oral sex. Now for me, it's something that I reserve for girls who I know, I trust, I've been seeing often. I know they aren't sexually promiscuous. I verify that they don't have STDs. Also, they are clean, they are hygienic, and they have to have a pretty pussy pretty much. So I know some guys, and I have some friends who absolutely love doing it, right? They can meet a girl first day and they'll do it. But for me, that's my take on it. And if a girl is really into you, usually she will even give you oral sex without necessarily making you do anything in return. She just wants to please you. Now, I've heard this question a lot, and that is, does size matter? I'm gonna be the first one to tell you, and here's a black pill, I guess you could say, is that the bigger you are, the less you have to try to be good at sex, basically. And it's true, size does matter. For every woman that I ever met, and I know, they will never admit it to you, or maybe they will, but they prefer more, not smaller penis sizes. Now, based on my experience and research, if you're falling anywhere between 5.5 inches length to, I would say, like 7.5 or 8, you're in a pretty decent spot to where you can maneuver and pretty much get the job done. Yes, if you're anything besides 5.5 inches or lower, you're going to be more on the smaller side, and you have to put a little bit extra work into your foreplay in order to satisfy a woman and keep her coming back. Or you just gotta have the best stroke game, which we're also going to get into later. Now, if you're falling in the range between, I would say, 6.5, 7, and that length range, you're at an ideal spot to where a chick wouldn't consider you small, but she also wouldn't necessarily consider you big, depending on who you ask and their experience with men. Now, like all things, there is such thing as too much or too big, and that will fall anywhere between 8.5 inches in length up. So if you're pushing that, that's when you're not able to fully mobilize the use of your tool, you know what I mean? Like, you can't go full deep strokes without hurting her, or like, you know, you won't get the best satisfaction out of like blowjobs, because, you know, a chick really can't do much with it, or most girls really can't do much with it. So with that being said, There is a curse to having a big one is all I'm trying to say. So if you're on the smaller range, don't feel too bad, because the bigger guys, they are having a struggle too. Also, there are many methods and enhancements that you can do to kind of increase your size, which could include making sure that your erections are as stiff and as much blood flow as possible in order to get the most out of yourself. There's also some exercise technique. One of them is called jelqing, J-E-L-Q. Search it up. It is a pretty known thing to make your junk bigger. I learned about it when I was like 16 years old. And nowadays they have many male enhancement pills and things that you can do to kind of make yourself more optimal. But with all things, including facial aesthetics, if you truly want to increase your size, surgery might be the only route. Now let's talk about stroke and rhythm, because this is very, very important once you're actually inside the chick, and will kind of dictate on how good you are at sex. Because think about it, sex is a male-led thing and a male-dominant thing. So with that being said, sex, whether or not it's good or bad, is mostly dependent on the male, unfortunately, right? Because most chicks, especially including missionary in some positions, all they gotta do is lay there. Very few girls know how to actually throw it back and manipulate their hips and body in order to complement your sex. So most of the time, especially if a girl is more inexperienced, it's going to be on you to make sure that it is good, and your stroke game is a part of that. The biggest thing I can tell you about stroke game that I've learned is to make sure every stroke is as deep as possible, and you do that by whatever position you're in, to make sure that your pelvis is fully touching either her pelvis and or backside, whatever position you're doing, right? And making sure that you come out to where, you know, you're still in her, but you're more on the tip, and you repeat that, making sure every stroke is deep, guys. Maybe TMI, but this is what the Patreon is for. I went back and looked at some of my old videos, you know, my POV videos, if you know what I'm talking about, from college. And I realized, like, bro, my sex game was whack. I'm gonna be real with you guys. The stroke wasn't there. I was like doing shallow strokes for some reason. I'm not sure if I was scared to go all the way in or what, but I'm glad that has evolved for me, because nowadays, deep strokes every single time. No shallow strokes and no bunny rabbit strokes, which we're gonna get into speed right now. A lot of girls like variable speeds. Some girls prefer it slow, some girls prefer it fast. Most girls like a mix of in between. And it's gonna be, once again, dependent on the position that you are in. Doggy style, which is a great position that a lot of guys do, I never really go slow in. I usually keep at a medium pace and tempo, and I usually do the fastest type of stroke right here, right? And also, speaking about tempo, you wanna make sure you have an even tempo. So, which is also gonna be dependent on your cardiovascular strength. And that is why I'd say to myself, there's no way that fat guys or out of shape guys have good sex, because they don't have the cardiovascular capacity to keep up with that rhythm. Missionary, I notice more girls prefer it like slower and more deep and more intense, right? But for doggy style, a lot of girls like to be thrashed, fucked like a slut, grabbing their hair, holding their arms behind their back, doing all that stuff. And going based on the deepness of the stroke, remember how I said if you have a bigger tool that it's going to be easier to be good at sex? And that is because it takes less effort in order to get those full deep strokes. If you're like pushing 4 inches in length, those strokes are going to naturally be more shallow. And guys, it depends on the girl that you're dealing with too. Let's talk about the female anatomy, which you must understand too, is that here's the vagina, the whole thing. You have the vagina hole, you have the clitoris. Clitoris is basically the dick of a female. That's where they get all their stimulation from. If you stimulate that, they will eventually orgasm. Some girls can orgasm through vaginal penetration, but it is more rare. I met girls who can do both, I met girls who can only do one or the other. It is totally based on their biology. Now, another thing that is based on female biology is the length of their cervix. Here goes the wall up in their body. Here goes the vaginal opening. Some girls have a very narrow or short cervix. Some have really long, deep ones, right? So those ones that are long and deeper, they can take more. And it's going to take more in order to satisfy them in a sense. But girls who have very narrow or short cervixes, you can have a small willy and it still gets the job done. Now let's talk about lasting. Basically, you want to maximize your time lasting and not be a minute man. Between 20 and 30 minutes. If they don't have a low sex drive, it could be as little as 15 minutes, but usually between 20 and 30 minutes is the optimal time in regards to the length of sex lasting. That could include foreplay if you do that, but overall the whole entire experience. Because think about it, some guys brag about having sex for a long time and oh, I last hours, and when you think about it, that's like saying, oh, I ran on the treadmill for hours. Like at one point you're having diminishing returns, and I find that in myself. If sex is lasting too long, whether or not, maybe because I can't come or whatever the reason is, then it becomes a little bit monotonous and boring, and the girl starts drying up because she's no longer into it. So basically just try to last minimum at least 15 minutes, but maximum no longer than like 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be too long. Now, to be good at sex, you don't have to just be physically stimulating. In fact, if you're emotional stimulating to a woman, then that can make you even better. And the way you can get emotionally involved during sex is using verbal cues or talking dirty, using actions. So I'll tell you this trifecta: mostly all girls love choking, pulling their hair, and slapping their ass. Those three things. Do that every single time, no matter who you're dealing with, and I promise you, they will probably enjoy it and like it. And if they don't, then that is a very, very rare case, because most girls subconsciously have rape fantasies. Crazy, right? Girls love being dominated and or being very submissive in the bedroom, if they are a feminine woman. So whenever you get a chance, missionary, if they're on top of you, if they're on top of you, choke them, doggy style, as you're going in, pull her hair, choke her at the same time, but don't like choke too hard or pull it too hard. You gotta find the balance between that too. And overall, if you're a dirty talker too, like learn some dirty talking techniques, because that can really get a girl turned on. And that's something that I truly don't do a whole lot, that I actually want to do more. Now, regarding the best positions, that's going to be solely dependent on the girl too, but just know that each position has a variant of it that can be manipulated to further enhance the physical stimulation. So I'll give some examples. Missionary, instead of normal basic missionary, you can add a pillow underneath her lower back, and it will kind of make her hips higher so that you can penetrate it at a different angle that will kind of feel better for her. Think of it as doing a bicep curl, just standing up, versus doing a bicep curl on an incline bench, hitting it at a different angle and you feeling a greater contraction. Another one with missionary is, I love doing this by the way, putting a leg up on your shoulder while going in. Right? You can combine both, put the pillow underneath your back and put one leg on the shoulder, or even both legs on the shoulder. Girls love it. So try and find like the variation of each position that you do, because it's going to make it that much better, and this can be done with all positions. Now, another thing to be good at sex that I realize will make my sex better is that if I'm genuinely horny and turned on. And the way that you can manipulate this and kind of make sure that this is at its peak is to quit watching porn, quit fapping and self-pleasuring yourself, because if you do that too much, you're not reaching your optimal levels of being turned on. Yeah, you think you're turned on because you just fap once a day and you're still turned on. Imagine if you didn't. Your sex game is going to go through the roof because you're actually turned on and into it. And the more turned on that you are, the better overall it's going to be. Now, on the opposite end, you might not last as long, but like I said, balance with everything. And lastly, guys, as the guy being in the dominant position, you must lead everything. You must be a leader in life and also in the bedroom if you want to be in the top 1% of men. That means whenever you want to change positions, do not ask her. Do not wait for her to tell you to change positions. You do it yourself. Doggy, you did it for 5 minutes. Pull out, turn her over, switch. Oh, you're a missionary? Come pick her up, move her into another room, then keep going. Like, you set the frame and lead the whole entire interaction, because that will go a long way. Even if your stroke game is weak, guys, if you do that and you show how much in control you are and dominant you are in the situation, that's going to emotionally turn her on more and make her more connected to you from that aspect of things. And like I said, you don't even have to have the biggest size or the best stroke or anything like that. So as you see, there are a lot of moving parts to having good sex and being very good at it. And hopefully you can take a bit of these things and kind of implement it into your own practice. And once you actually start getting consistent sex, hopefully most of you guys are. If you're not, then obviously self-improve to get there. And then from there, learn from your own experience too. See what works best for you and your personal size, because it's going to be different for everybody. So hopefully guys enjoyed this juicy topic. Subscribe. See you guys in the next one. Peace.